Time makes you forget who you are and remember who you were, but timelessness sees who you are and forgets who you were. And this is why overthinking is actually a common protocol for people without full sacks. Because when you have a full sack, as a regal alchemist with a full sack, there's really nothing that you need to overthink about. And it is a process, of course. If you are overthinking, just notice that you're overthinking and then come back to it. That's the meditative practice. But also don't get caught in the trap of methods, because all methods are traps. Any trap that doesn't make it seem like it's a trap is a trap. And that's exactly what it is. And a trap into what? Well, it's a trap into time. Because the only way that we can truly be free is in timelessness. And when we orient ourselves from timelessness, love is a place in timelessness where we freely give and we freely receive with maximum positive emotion and little to no negative emotion. I don't think that heaven would be, I don't think about heaven as a place, but I think it can be a place. But again, heaven, I see heaven as a place in the astral realm in which that's where people go for certain things that they did, right? And for better or for worse, because heaven is still a place. It's not a placelessness in timelessness. And the whole game is to get out of this. Like, I don't want to go to heaven. And that might sound very strange to some people. I don't want to go to heaven. Because why would I think about going to heaven if heavenliness is right here, right now? See, you have to let go of these presuppositions and these preconceived notions of what you think you're supposed to be doing in order to simply notice the beauty and the awe that is already in front of us. And this is why people who are not ready for this will not understand what I'm saying, whereas the people who are ready to hear it, and maybe they're a bit adverse to hearing this, maybe this is not necessarily their cup of tea, but for some reason it gives them clarity. They don't know why. They don't know why it gives them clarity. They're just like, I don't feel confused by this. I just feel more clarity. Even though I'm angry about the clarity. Well, that's weird. Why am I angry about the clarity? And I know that there's people out there that can be experiencing like things like this as I'm speaking, because I experience the same type of things. When I realize that heaven is part of the trap, and heavenliness, if you make it a quality, then like earthliness, hellishness, heavenliness, if you make these things qualities, then rather than destinations, then you have this everlasting quality of life. That is the everlasting life. That's when Christ says, I'm the life and the resurrection. That's exactly what it means. And then, because there's a great quote in the autobiography of a yogi by Yogananda. I read this recently. And for those that are Regal Change old timers following closely to this channel, you're going to understand what I'm saying here. What is life and death to the one who has light? That's really something to not think about, right? Don't overthink this stuff. Because when you're on this journey of being the regal alchemist with a full sack, or just a man with a full, just whatever title you want to give yourself, okay? Don't be attached to the title, but just whatever title you want to give yourself. And you see yourself as simply a man who is, and if a woman is watching this, the equivalent to a woman with a full sack, because obviously women don't have semen to store in their body, but the equivalent of a female, for a female with a full sack, let's say, is I would say she has let go of her own presuppositions and she has become like a man. But not in the sense that you might think. A lot of people, when I say this, there's a lot of people might see these as contradictions, but they're not contradictions. So the most masculine men I've ever met have always been capable of very feminine gentleness. And then the most feminine women I've ever met have been most capable of masculine aggression. And I've often wondered, well, what exactly is that? You know, in the past I did, and now it's very obvious and clear to me, but it wouldn't be so obvious and clear to me if I didn't have the presuppositions of the knowledge that I do today. And it's not even to say like, oh, I am just so knowledgeable, I'm just so intellectual, and I'm intellectual. You know, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I've let go of the preconceived notions to the degree in which I know that most of this is subjective anyway. There are axiomatic truths, absolutely, but how we view those axiomatic truths is going to be entirely dependent upon our own psychic metabolism in processing information and our exposure to certain informations as well. You know, that's another thing that's going to be really important. Like Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, for example, he says to Arjuna, I hope that's how you pronounce it. I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't like to hope and I don't like to think, but that's what I gather. Arjuna, right? So Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, and he says, I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of every single organism that has ever lived or that ever will live. Okay, that's pretty interesting. And so it's pretty much mirroring exactly what Christ says in the book of Revelations, right? And I'm not saying that you should think something or that you shouldn't think something. I'm saying that to live with an open heart is really the antidote to a lot of these traps. Because religion is a trap, you know, theology can be a trap. Ontology might be a trap as well, considering certain perspectives of ontology, epistemology, all of these ologies and igens and isms and isms, all of these things can be traps. In fact, I would say silence is really the only antidote to get out of methods. Like, think about all of the revelations that you've ever had. When was any of these revelations, that like the most profound revelations that you had, they didn't come from outside of you, right? Now, I think that it's very appropriate that whoever you can get help from, if they're going to be, you know, working with you and you're going to be working with them, whether it's you watching this video or you're in my Godlike Mastery offer or the Regal Academy, whatever it is that you're doing in your work with me, because if you're watching this and you're committed to the process of embodying the full sack philosophy of no philosophy, then you understand that the whole point is to let go. The whole name of the game, let's say, is that there is no game to play, and that to think about thinking about the game is only going to entrap you ever more. So what do we do then? Well, if everything that we do is part of the trap, then how do we respond? How do we move forth with great carefulness and not carelessness? Or ought we to be more careless or careful? Well, first of all, remove the oughts. Anytime you get this sense like, ooh, I ought to be doing this, or I should be doing this, or I ought to, I should, bleh, 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 bleh. The soul rejects that. The soul rejects that. The soul of existence doesn't want you to should be doing anything. There is no should or ought with the soul of existence, with God. There is no ought. And some people might call this gnosis as well. These are all pointing towards the same things. These are all pointing towards the same thing. It's just a matter of what perspective is going to be most conducive for you. And I myself, in the Regal timeline theory, in which I am correlating and contrasting these perspectives, is I'm creating a system that outlines the method and the phenomenon of the phenomenon and methods itself, while aiming to provide a method out of that method of methods. It's all very paradoxical, but it actually makes quite a bit of sense when you understand what I'm actually saying. And that is the embodiment of the full sack philosophy of no philosophy. The full sack philosophy of no philosophy is that of wherever there is truth and whatever there is truth in, if it works for you, great. If that truth is just something that you're not ready for, because all truth is timeless. Truth is timelessness. What else would it be? Why do you think we know such names like Fyodor Dostoevsky, for example? That guy spoke a lot of truth. Have you ever read Crime and Punishment? Holy smokes, dude. That is just chef's kiss. One of the best books I've ever read. I would like to read it again, but at the same time, I really don't, because man, oh man, it wasn't a difficult read because it was like difficult to read. It was a difficult read because you saw so much of yourself in it. Because that's the whole point. The analogy of well, not really the analogy, but the storyline goes is like, Dostoevsky puts a character in a position where he basically has every reason to kill somebody, to murder something. Like, he has every good reason to do so. But then Raskolnikov is the name of the character. Raskolnikov, before he, spoiler alert, before he does the murder and after he does the murder, it's completely different types of personalities. And he doesn't know how to cope with it, really. And his way of coping with it, and a lot of people in our day and age, we use the term cope. They say this is like a bad thing. Like, oh, you're coping, bro. Oh, you're coping. Coping really isn't that big of a deal. It's just a way to deal with circumstances if you don't know how to be the circumstance. But as a full sack man, you're going to know how to be the circumstance no matter what. You see, this is something I thought about with fasting, for example. Like, a lot of religions and cultures advocate for the utility of fasting. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. I do think, however, people idolize it. It is much like a lot of spiritual practices, not just semen retention, but like tarot or divination, or no matter what type of spiritual method it is, religion itself, reading, I have to read the Bible every single day. I used to think that, by the way. I used to think that I had to read the Bible every single day, because otherwise I'm not going to be the most righteous person I can be. Like, this is part of my spiritual discipline. And it had its utility, sure, but to force myself into like being with God, that's like the most oxymoron thing in the world. Like, if I'm going to force myself into being with God, that's not the way to be with God. The best way to be with God is just be open-hearted and be as honest and just completely accepting of whatever's going on as it's going on as possible, and just take it all in. Take it all in. Feed yourself with the suffering, and it won't be suffering anymore. That's pretty much what the source, God, the soul of existence, I call it the soul of existence, whatever you want to call it, does, is it just feeds you until, like, because here's the thing, right? I was thinking about this with fasting. So with fasting, if you have to like starve yourself in order to digest something, that means that your organs are not actually functioning the way that they're supposed to. Now, this is not to say that they don't need a break every now and again, and it's not like a bad thing to have those parasites, any like quote unquote bad parasites leave the body. And there is studies, and I do intuitively feel that if you have cancer, for example, fasting would be a very potent thing for you because the body is attacking itself. And so fasting can be a way to regulate your system. But after a while, again, that's just a method. Fasting is just a method, guys. So all of these things are just methods. And if you're trapping yourself in the method, if you, oh, I have to fast or I have to do this, you're overthinking yourself into a trap. And I say this because I know what it's like. I did that. Like I gave you an example with the Bible, right? That was just one example. And so now I just read holy books when I feel like reading holy books. I read any type of book. I'd really like to read A Raisin in the Sun. I don't know why. I've never really read it before. I don't really know too much about it, but there's something about that book. It is by Ernest Hemingway. And for some reason, that book is just really calling to me right now. I don't know why, but that I want to read that book, so I'm going to read it. You know, we just do things because we want to do them. That's the ultimate, like, spiritual practices. Can you do what you want and accept it as it is? And if you do make a mistake, can you just own the mistake and move on? Or are you going to milk yourself in self-pity and shame and guilt and all these things as you recognize that you made a mistake? And I say this to you, but I'm also saying it to myself, you know, because I am not the educator. I'm not the master. I'm not the helper. I am the education. I'm the mastery education that is also the help. That is what I am, but I'm also not attached to that identity. So at least I'm aiming not to be attached to that identity because I don't know what else I would be in the spirit of the time. Because we're always changing, we're always evolving. And my aim is to simply speak to those that have eyes to see and ears to hear. So whatever your method is, if it's whatever perception you have about, like, maybe meditation or prayer is your method, whatever it is, commit to it. And when you don't feel like one thing that I do is a ritual, like a fire ritual. I like to do fire rituals. For some reason, that just really speaks to me. But I don't do them very often. I don't do them very often anymore, anyway. I only do it when I really feel like, okay, there's some kind of true change that needs to be had, like a fire of creation needs to be sparked here. And so I'll do a fire ritual. But a lot of the time, I'll also do other types of elemental rituals, like with water or with earth or with air. Like with the incense, some people might think this is kind of silly, but with the incense, what I'll do is I'll hold the incense and I'll wave it like a wand, you know, through my place, and I'll just speak a word like sovereignty, for example. Sovereignty, sovereignty, sovereignty. And it's not like, I know that it's just my trust in the act that's reshaping the perception of my own psyche. It's not the thing that's doing it, it's my perception of it. And so it's the action itself and me observing the action through myself. That's the way to do it. So don't overthink this. Just do what you want and trust that whatever happens, it's going to work out for the best because Grace is running the show anyway. So I trust that this message reached those that are ready for this. And I just felt this great shift. Somebody really just felt like a great shift right there. Like somebody I felt really let this all sink in, which is good. That is good. Yeah. Okay. Apply to the Godlike Mastery offer if you're looking for a deep transformation in which, again, I am the education of mastery. I'm not the master, but that Godlike Mastery is available to you. Or you can join the Regal Academy, where we have the group of individuals that are like-minded, as well as curious about a lot of different types of things. You know, the essence of the Academy is that of free-spirited dialogue in which love emanates thoroughly. And that's what the aim of the academy is. And I think that's what any true university ought to be, or education ought to be. The universities don't do that anymore. This free-flowing ideas, that doesn't happen in the universities. So, that's why I have the Regal Academy available for those that want it and that want to utilize those resources in the classes and such and the group calls. Peace be with you all. Until next time.